Hello, and welcome back to Buddhist Story 68. And for many years, I've had the profound privilege of exploring the ancient texts of Buddhism. Today, we're not just going to talk about a historical figure. We're going to deconstruct one of the most persistent and damaging misunderstandings in spiritual history: the reduction of the Buddha to a mere religious icon. A Chinese god who taught a pessimistic message of suffering. The video you just watched provides a solid, foundational overview of the Buddha's life, his birth, his encounters with the four sights, his ascetic journey, and his final enlightenment. It correctly points out that Buddha is not a name but a title, and it touches upon the core tenets of the Four Noble Truths. However, as a scholar who has spent decades studying this subject, I can tell you that this is only the very beginning of the story. The popular narrative, while inspiring, often misses the radical, revolutionary heart of the Buddha's teachings, the parts that make them so profoundly relevant to our lives today. Over 2,500 years later, I promise you, this is not just another retelling of an ancient tale. We are going to go beyond the myth, beyond the popular misinterpretations, and into the very essence of what the Buddha discovered. My personal research has led me to believe that the Buddha was not a passive sage but a fierce, compassionate intellectual who performed a kind of spiritual surgery on the human mind. We will explore how his teachings are a direct challenge to the modern mind's most cherished illusions. From the pursuit of endless pleasure to the belief in a fixed, permanent self, this journey is designed to give you a new vocabulary and a new lens through which to view not just Buddhism, but your own mind. It is a journey into the life of a man who was, in fact, a scientist of the mind, and a spiritual revolutionary whose insights are more urgent and necessary today than ever before. So, let's begin this incredible journey toward a deeper understanding of the Buddha and ourselves. Part 1. The historical and psychological context of the Buddha's awakening. The video's narrative of Prince Siddhartha's life is a beautiful and inspiring one. It correctly highlights the incredible paradox of his upbringing, a man shielded from all suffering, who ultimately became the world's foremost teacher on its nature and cessation. But to truly appreciate his journey, we must delve deeper into the psychological and philosophical landscape of his time. Chapter 1. The King's Grand Delusion, a modern parable. King Suddhodana's attempt to shield his son from suffering is more than just an ancient tale. It is a profound parable for our modern condition. In today's world, we are constantly creating our own palaces of distraction. We use technology, entertainment, and material consumption to shield ourselves from the realities of old age, sickness, and death. We curate our social media feeds to show only our happiest moments, creating a complete illusion that everything is good as it is. The video states, when there is no suffering, there is no point in making any effort at all. This is a brilliant and timeless truth. The king's experiment failed not just because of fate, but because it was fundamentally flawed. The absence of suffering does not lead to contentment. It leads to spiritual stagnation and a profound lack of purpose. My own research into the psychology of well-being shows that a life without challenge is a life without meaning. We need adversity to build resilience, to cultivate compassion, and to discover what truly matters. The king's ideal conditions were, in fact, a spiritual prison. The prince's encounter with the four sights, the old man, the sick man, the corpse, and finally, the serene ascetic, was not a coincidence. It was a confrontation with reality, a direct challenge to the illusion of the palace. The first three sights represented the inevitability of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, while the fourth, the ascetic, presented the possibility of a solution. This was the moment Siddhartha's grand, existential question was born. Is there a way out of this? Chapter 2. Siddhartha's Journey, the middle path as an intellectual discovery. The video describes Siddhartha's journey to find the truth. From studying with famous teachers to engaging in extreme asceticism, this narrative is often told as a spiritual quest. But I want to reframe it as a rigorous, scientific investigation. Siddhartha was not just a spiritual seeker. He was an intellectual radical who tested every hypothesis to its limit. The path of the yogis. When Siddhartha went to the famous meditation teachers of his time, he didn't just listen, he practiced with an unparalleled intensity. The video states he quickly reaching perfection in each teaching. This is not hyperbole. He mastered the highest states of meditative absorption, jhanas, reaching a state of formless consciousness. But he left each teacher with a powerful conclusion. This does not lead to final liberation. He realized that these states, while blissful, were impermanent and still conditioned. They were a temporary escape, not a permanent solution. The path of asceticism. The video's description of his 6 years of rigorous self-mortification is a chilling reminder of his commitment. He pushed his body to the brink of death, living on a single grain of rice a day, believing that by killing the body, he could free the mind. This was a common belief in his time. But the rice from the kind girl Sujata was not just a symbol of his survival. It was the final piece of data in his experiment. He realized that both extremes, the luxurious life of the palace and the tortuous life of the ascetic, had failed. The mind needs a healthy body to function, just as a finely tuned instrument needs a balanced musician. This was the discovery of the middle path, a revolutionary concept that rejected both self-indulgence and self-mortification. The Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree was not a sudden, magical event. It was the culmination of years of rigorous investigation. He had systematically dismantled every philosophical and spiritual theory of his time and found them all to be incomplete. He had a clear view of the problem, a precise understanding of the false solutions, and he was now ready to find the real one. Part 2. The radical core of the Buddha's teachings. The video correctly identifies the Four Noble Truths as the essence of the Buddha's first sermon. But to truly appreciate their power, we must go beyond a simple summary. The Buddha's teachings are not just a list of precepts, they are a profound re-engineering of human consciousness. Chapter 3. Unpacking the Four Noble Truths. The video gives a simple, effective summary. There is suffering. Suffering has a cause. Suffering can be stopped. And the Noble Eightfold Path leads to nirvana. While this is a good start, the scholarly perspective reveals a much more nuanced and powerful message. The noble truth of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. The video uses the term suffering. But as we've discussed, dukkha is a much broader concept. It encompasses not just pain, but the pervasive sense of unease and dissatisfaction that permeates all conditioned existence. The video correctly points out that even pleasant experiences are subject to change, leading to dissatisfaction. The Buddha was not a pessimist, he was a radical realist. He saw the inherent flaw in trying to find lasting happiness in a world of constant change. The noble truth of the origin of dukkha, craving, the video names desires and attachments as the cause of suffering. This is correct, but from a scholarly perspective, the Pali word tanha, craving or thirst, is more precise. Tanha is not just a desire for pleasure, but also a craving for non-existence, a desire to escape pain, and a craving for becoming, a desire to be something you're not. This three-part framework of tanha explains the entire spectrum of human restlessness. From the desire for a new car to the desire to escape from a difficult memory. The noble truth of the cessation of dukkha, nibbana. The video states that suffering can be stopped and the state of nirvana can be reached. This is the ultimate promise of the Buddha's teaching. Nibbana, nirvana, is not a heaven or a mystical afterlife. It is the complete and utter cessation of craving and the end of the cycle of rebirths. It is a state of mind, an unconditioned reality, where there is no more agitation or restlessness. It is the peace that comes from the complete dissolution of the illusions of self and permanence. The noble truth of the path to the cessation of dukkha, the Noble Eightfold Path. The video correctly identifies this as the final part of the puzzle. The Noble Eightfold Path is the practical, step-by-step guide to achieving nibbana. It is the Buddha's precise prescription for a life free from dissatisfaction. Chapter 4. The Three Poisons, the Psychology of Suffering. The video touches on the three causes of suffering in its broader interpretation, naming ignorance, attachment, and aversion. This is a crucial insight that deserves a much deeper look. In Buddhist psychology, these are known as the three poisons, kilesas, or the roots of all unwholesome states. Ignorance, avidya. The video defines this as a basic lack of understanding of how the world works and how we ourselves work. This is a perfect definition. It is not an intellectual ignorance, but a fundamental misunderstanding of the three marks of existence: impermanence, anicca. unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta. We are ignorant of these truths. So we live our lives as if everything is permanent, satisfying, and a product of a fixed self. Attachment, lobha. This is the desire for pleasant things. The video says, our mind separates the pleasant from the unpleasant, and this illusory division gives rise to attachment to the pleasant. This is a profound truth. Because of our ignorance, we attach to things, people, and experiences, believing they will bring us lasting happiness. Aversion, dosa. This is the desire to push away unpleasant things. It is the root of anger, hatred, and bitterness. Aversion is just the flip side of attachment. When the pleasant thing we are attached to leaves, we experience aversion to its loss. When an unpleasant thing we are trying to avoid comes to us, we experience aversion to it. The Buddha's genius was in seeing that these three mental states are the engines of suffering. They are the gears that keep the wheel of dissatisfaction spinning. The path to freedom, therefore, is not about fighting the world. It is about systematically dismantling these three poisons within our own minds. Part 3. The enduring relevance of the Buddha. The video asks, are his teachings relevant today? The answer, from a scholar's perspective, is a resounding yes. In fact, they may be more relevant now than ever before. Chapter 5. The Buddha as a scientist of the mind. The Buddha was not a prophet, a god, or a mystic in the traditional sense. He was a scientist of the mind. He used a rigorous methodology of observation, hypothesis, and experimentation to understand the nature of consciousness. His laboratory was his own mind, and his data was his direct experience. He didn't ask anyone to believe him. He asked them to test his teachings for themselves. 2. Come and see, ehipassiko. This is the hallmark of a true scientific inquiry. This is why Buddhism is often described as more of a psychological philosophy than a religion. It is not based on faith in a deity, but on direct, verifiable experience. The Four Noble Truths are not articles of faith. They are a working model of the human psyche. And the Noble Eightfold Path is a user's manual for achieving mental liberation. Chapter 6. The Buddha's legacy in the 21st century. The video's final thought, that the Buddha's teachings are still relevant, is the perfect place for us to end our discussion. In a world of endless distraction, instant gratification, and curated realities, the Buddha's insights offer a powerful antidote. Mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, which is now mainstream in psychology, medicine, and business, comes directly from the Buddha's teachings. It is our greatest tool for freeing ourselves from the constant noise and living in the present moment. Compassion. In an age of increasing polarization and division, the Buddha's emphasis on compassion and loving kindness is a direct challenge to our ego-driven conflicts. It reminds us that our true nature is one of interconnectedness, not separation. The middle path. The Buddha's rejection of extremes is more relevant than ever. In a world that pushes us toward constant work or constant consumption, the middle path offers a balanced, sustainable way of life. It teaches us to find joy in simplicity, and to find contentment without needing more. The understanding of suffering. The video notes that we can't get rid of all suffering, but we can change our relationship to it. This is the ultimate lesson. The Buddha's teachings don't promise a life without pain, but they do promise a life free from the mental anguish we create for ourselves. They teach us to find peace not by changing the world, but by changing our minds. The Buddha was a man who, by the power of his own will and intellect, achieved a state of mind free from the chains of ignorance and craving. His story is not just a myth, it is a profound and living example of the potential that lies within each of us. The title Buddha is not a status to be revered from a distance. It is a title that reminds us that we all have the capacity to awaken. Thank you for joining me on this deep exploration of the Buddha's life and teachings. I hope this discussion has inspired you to see the Buddha not as a distant God, but as a living teacher whose wisdom is ready to be applied to your own life. If you're ready to take the next step on this journey, I encourage you to begin by simply observing your own mind with kindness and curiosity. The path begins with that simple act of awareness. If this video has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Buddha Story 68 and sharing it with others. Your support helps us continue this journey of spreading ancient wisdom in a modern world. Until next time, may you walk with peace and clarity.